Okay, so we finished up on the general prohibitions. Now we're going to talk about using the Commerce Control List and country chart, bringing them together as it relates to specific ECCNs going to countries that we want to export to. So we can summarize our conversation on the general prohibitions by saying that they help to determine if a license authorization is required for an item. We saw that in General Prohibitions 1 through 10. Second bullet point, the CCL and country chart assist in making determinations for reasons for control to a specific country. So we're matching up ECCNs to the countries that we wish to export to. This use of the CCL and country chart, ultra essential cross-referencing procedure. We can make a determination on an ECCN, but we still have to match it up with the country or countries that we wish to export to. Without doing that, the exercise is really a waste of time. We haven't finished anything. So this whole license determination for an ECCN, we're on our last bullet point here, are based on answering the question, is there an X in the box? We saw this briefly when we provided a definition of the country chart, but this whole element of the X in the box, very, very critical aspect of the entire conversation. Let's move over to the right for a mock run through the export control decision tree as it relates to getting down to this whole idea of is there an X in the box. So let's assume we're working up a ECCN. We've done some research. We know a couple of things already. For example, we know we're subject to the EAR. No problem there. We also have determined in our mocked up example that our item is classified under an ECCN on the CCL. We already talked about General Prohibitions 4 through 10. We'll assume for this illustration that the answer to the question, do General Prohibitions 4 through 10 apply, is no. This takes us to where we want to be right now. The red circle that you see here. Is there an X in the box? Meaning, are there controls in place specific to a reason for control? If the answer is no, we go straight to no license required. If the answer is yes, and we'll be getting to this further down the path here, we move down to is a license exception available? If the answer is yes, you use a license exception. If the answer is no, you submit an application for the license. Let's take an even closer look at how this progression works. So the steps for using the Commerce Control List and country chart. Step 1, we've already done this for purposes of our conversation. Determine that the item is controlled by a specific ECCN. Yes, we've done that, and there is a control. Step 2, identify the reasons for control and the corresponding ECCN. Anti-terror, national security, UN sanctions. We've gone through them. Step 3, for the country of destination in question, whatever the country is, use the country chart to pinpoint the column identifier for each reason for control. We'll be illustrating this visually in just a moment. But continuing on, step 4, determine if there is an X in the box, an X in the cell, it is a matrix after all, next to the country in question for each reason for control. Step 5, if there is an X in the box, the answer yes, license application must be submitted based on the reason for control and destination, unless a license exception applies. Step 6, if there are no X's in the box, and provided General Prohibitions 4 through 10 do not apply, shipment may be effected using the symbol NLR, no license required. Let's bring this story to life. So in this example, we're bringing together the CCL and the country chart by using a continuation of the 5A001.A.3 example. This is the telecom system we've been talking about for some time now. And before we jump into the steps, just to illustrate the point or to reiterate the point on the lower right-hand side, the full extension of the ECCN citation 5A001.A.3 is right here where that red circle is. We're just being thorough, refreshing our memories. So in step 2, clearly, step 1 has already been taken care of because we have ascertained that our ECCN is 5A001, so we can jump right into step 2, which is to identify the reasons for control and the corresponding ECCN. You see that in the lower left-hand side, circled. They are national security, surreptitious listening, and anti-terrorism. So for this particular entry, 5A001, we have 3 reasons for control. If you move over to the right-hand side, gives more detail on each reason for control. NS applies to, there it is, 5A001.A.3. .eb5, and a couple of others, specifically national security. Below that, a little bit further, surreptitious listening applies to specific citations as well. And then at the very bottom, anti-terror applies to the entire entry. So you can see that you have to read down a little bit further. The reasons for control are quite important, but you have to dig deeper into each citation. In this case, 5A001.A.3. Now, hopefully your memory serves you, and you'll recall that in our original telecom system example, there was a sale going to Iceland. That is what we're looking at here, a particular excerpt from the Commerce Country Chart that shows Iceland. So what are we doing here? Well, for steps 3 and 4, we want to use the country chart to align destination and reason for control to ascertain if a license is required. As noted, 5A001.A and all of its extensions, .A.1, .A.2, and in our case, .A.3, does require a license for national security reasons. There it is. It's circled. So we know our ECCN, we know the reasons for control, we know where we want to export to, so we have to break out the country chart and see if there is an X in the box. And in this case, there is. So we either have to put forth a license application or look for a license exception that we can use, a topic that we will cover later on. But this is where we tie it all together, starting with the description of the product, the CCL index, determining if an ECCN exists for an item, looking at the reasons for control, understanding what they mean, understanding the technical parameters of our product, and then finally, matching that up with the country or countries that we wish to export to. Now, as a brief aside, for Iceland, you'll also note that there's an X in the box for missile technology and regional stability. But as it relates to 5A001.A.3, those weren't reasons for control that were listed. What was listed was national security, and very explicitly, by the way, about national security. So here it is. We either need a license, application, and approval, or legally find a way to use a license exception. Really important slide in terms of how we tie things together. To provide a little contrast, we want to give an example of no X's in the box as it relates to national security and anti-terrorism. If we were exporting to Canada, one of our biggest allies, our friends to the north, you'll see that there are no X's in the box as it relates to national security and anti-terrorism. So because there is no X in the box, as it relates to this specific reason for control, national security, anti-terror, we don't need an export license here. Now, just to be thorough, if in our particular ECCN citation, a reason for control happened to be chemical and biological weapons or firearms convention, there's X's in the box there. Totally different story. But as it relates to our example now, 5A001.A.3, there are no X's in the box for Canada. So just a little contrast there. We're going to wrap things up for this section, and as you can see in the title here, we'll be moving on to a long section, license exceptions. Really, really essential to our overall understanding of export controls as it relates specifically to BIS and the Export Administration regulations. So go get yourself a drink of water. We're going to be busy in this next section. We'll see you in a minute.